Welcome to PhD with Women on It, Hug the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hug delivered will be by our guest, Jo Brianti. Topic: How to safeguard your business information in a digital world. Episode 107 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo. And empathy is critical when you safeguard your business information in a digital world. Let me remind you about what's been happening in the world of technology and females. Kudos to Activiam CEO Katie Perrott for winning the prestigious Women in Technology Award in the Software and Services Provider category at the Informa Connect Banking Tech Awards USA last week. Congratulations to Elizabeth Moreno, president of Leia Partners, for delivering an inspiring and impactful speech at the Women Tech Global Summit. Her words ignited passion, empowered women, and showcased the immense potential of diversity in the tech industry. Now, let's go back to our topic: how to safeguard your business information in a digital world. In the digital age, businesses of all sizes face increasing challenges in protecting their valuable data from unauthorized access and breaches. This episode provides guidance and practical tips to help businesses strengthen data protection measures and ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their sensitive information. Our guest, Jo Brianti, is an experienced data protection officer with a background in project management, and leveraging her privacy knowledge and operational skills, Jo supports businesses in embedding privacy and data management techniques into their processes. Committed to maintaining confidentiality and upholding privacy rights, Jo helps businesses to build customer trust and integrity in the digital age. So, Jo, I'm calling you from Poland, Toruń, the beautiful location of the birthplace of Nicolaus Copernicus. And I wonder, where are you calling from?
I'm based in West London.
Beautiful location, many bright minds who also have to look into data protection. So, Jo, what got you into that business? And is the GDPR age over or just quite the beginning?
So I was working as a project manager. I then had twins, and it was difficult to continue with a complex job, long hours, and not seeing my children. So after some problems with childcare, I decided to work for myself. And then in late 2016, early 2017, I started finding out about GDPR, having to understand it for my own business, and very quickly became recognized by other small business owners as somebody who could answer questions. So I built up my knowledge, and then in the first lockdown, got my accreditation as a data protection officer, and have subsequently studied privacy law and privacy program management. And I work with businesses that range from startups, sole operators, through to medium-sized enterprises across a UK, European and global basis. because GDPR, while it is an EU regulation, there are people who might be running a business in the States who are targeting European or UK clients, and they need to be aware and understand what their requirements are to protect the data and be compliant with GDPR, even though they are not in the EU. And in terms of whether GDPR is over or whether it's just the start, this week we've heard about the Move It hack. There are a lot of big organisations like British Airways, for one, that springs to mind, that have had this significant hack of employee data, and there's a potential for bank details and all sorts of things. So I think privacy is here to stay. It is developing all the time. More and more countries are developing privacy regulation. At the last count, there were over 130 countries in the world that either had fully blown privacy regulation or who were working on it. So it's a fact of life, and as business owners, we have to embed it to deliver the trust with the client base that we will protect their data, and that the bank details are not going to be just shared willy-nilly, and they're not going to be spammed because we've sold their email addresses to other people. And it is vital.
So I was asking, of course, this was a question that I wanted to cause. I didn't mean to cause friction, but really, we've seen a lot of people talking about GDPR about 2 years ago, or even more. So, and now it kind of slowed down. I mean, there is not so much news anymore. I hope that everybody is aware of what cannot be done, what should be done with data. However, what would you say for somebody who just starts their career as a business person? What would you advise them to look at as a starter?
So first things first, if you're just starting out, make sure that you have some very basic protections in place. Make sure you've got business grade licensed software. Make sure that you've got good antivirus, malware, that you have secure systems, that you are password protected, that you're using things like multi-factor authentication. These days, it's not good enough to just say I'm using top quality software. You need to add layers of protection. So you need to think at the basics is you've got to have antivirus, malware, secure settings at the beginning. Then when you're using your software, you want a unique password. You want a difficult password. Don't just put your date of birth or your home address. Or one of the best ones is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those kinds of passwords are easy to crack. So you want a really complex one. Think about using a password manager, whether you use LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, or whatever. They will help you to create unique, complicated passwords. And then wherever multi-factor authentication is available, set that up for your systems. I know it's really frustrating because you type in your password, then you have to go to your phone and get the widget, and you get a number or it texts you. But it adds a layer of complexity that then stops hackers getting in to get your personal data. Once you've got those fundamentals in place, you then need to think about who am I sharing data with, where am I sharing data, and how am I validating that the people I share data with will treat it with the respect that I treat it with, and How do I comply with the regulations with regard to bringing people into my team? And these things will grow over time, and make sure that, in GDPR, the phrase is privacy by design and by default. What that means is that you need to be thinking, whenever I develop a business process, or when I look at onboarding a client or offboarding a client, what are the elements of privacy that I need to consider, and what are the GDPR requirements that will be touch points in this process? Look at them, think about them, and then you're doing GDPR all the time. It's not something that you just do once and put in the cupboard. It's a living, breathing, active participation to protect the data that you are collecting, processing, and storing. And then understanding, over a period of time, you will learn and understand the life cycle of the data. How long do you need to keep it to be compliant with GDPR and other data regulations that may be relevant in your industry, so that you're minimizing the length of time that you retain the data. And a classic one in this example is email marketing. A lot of us do email marketing, and we all have big lists perhaps, but have a look at those lists. How many people on your list open every email that you send, read every email that you send, engage with every email, whether that's click through, take the action that you ask. It might not be a click through, but it might be share something, review something, look at something. And ultimately, how many of those emails are driving sales in your business? So there's an active use and management of data. So as part of your email marketing, to be GDPR compliant, you might need to think about, how do I manage the data in my CRM system? How often am I going to look at who's responding to my emails, and what am I going to do about it if they're not responding to it? How am I going to re-engage them, or do I do something else? So all of those are fundamental steps from startup through to developing your relationship with data in your business.
So I can think about a couple of examples of actually previous guests. For example, Gabe Boutique founder, she has a small boutique with beautiful designs, and obviously she has got a shop, physical shop, but also
Yep.
online shop.
Yep.
And many clients would approach her via her Facebook. So what would be as an advice for her how to manage that CRM system so it's coherent? Can some of it be automated? For example, with automated reply.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with you using automation in tools, whether that is automated collection of the emails with which somebody signs up to your Facebook group, or to some other activity that you're doing with prospects and with clients. There's nothing wrong with you using a bot. What is important from a GDPR perspective is that you are transparent with people. What are you telling them? What are you promising them? If you're promising them that you're going to protect their data, then you need to think about how your systems do that. That could be manual, or it could be automation. What I would say with automation is that you need to ensure that as part of that automation process, that at the very first step or steps, or first one or two steps, that you are telling your prospects and your clients, I'm managing your data in this way. If you consent to that, tick this box. If you don't, then what are the consequences for them? Does that mean they can't participate in this event? Does that mean that they can't do something else? And on that note, you need to think very carefully about how you manage that, because consent has to be transparent and it has to be freely given. So, what you can't do when you're collecting consent is say to them that if you don't consent to receive, for example, my email newsletter, you can't come to my freebie event or you can't have my download, because that puts condition on, and that then creates friction with that freely given consent. So when you're thinking of automation, think about how you're going to manage that. Ensure that people are giving consent freely, and that you're just clear with them how you're collecting and why you're collecting and what you're going to do with the data after the event.
So the data as it is something that you hold on. What about, for example, events? You host an event, you have a list of people who are going to attend an event, and they consented to attend the event. How do you inform that you're planning to take pictures of their faces, and how to make sure that everybody is happy with that?
So, in the run up to the event, you may have an email process. So, for example, I've agreed to attend an event earlier on today. I filled in my form on Eventbrite. Once I'd filled in my form, checked and submitted and registered, I've had an email from the organisation saying, thanks ever so much for signing up. Da, 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 da. Here's the link for the event. We'd like to invite you to do ABC afterwards. Here's some content. Please fill in this form to say you're happy with what's going to happen next. So they've said, yes, we will email you after the event with the replay using the data that you've given us. But they've also asked if they can use my data after that event in a different way. And in the email, they've asked me to just complete a form that says I consent. It's a checkbox. And that checkbox will clearly, in their back end, trigger an automation that says that I can now receive emails from them for a different subject. So they've maximized the way they use my data, but they've done it legitimately and they've done it with my consent. So they've been totally transparent. And that's the key thing. It's always about being transparent. It's about being open. And the more you are transparent and open with your customers, the more you build trust, the more you build respect, and the more people will want to work with you, because working in small, particularly in small businesses, it's not always about the skill that you have, it's about how you treat people, it's about the trust, it's about the relationship building.
I can think of many questions right now. However, I am mindful of our community. We have a comment from Olga Vicina. Great to see you back, Beata. Welcome, Jo Brianti. And heart emoji. Thank you so much, Olga. Lovely to see you too. I hope you're enjoying this show and many previous and many the ones that are coming. So going back to the fact that some people may not want to, because I've experienced that, some people didn't want to appear on the photographs. So basically the organizer asked them to step aside when they were taking group photo, and that's okay, that's allowed. Yes. So I'm wondering, what is the purpose of protecting your face? Because I mean,
so
it can be taken by anybody.
But there could be a number of reasons for that. So, you know, for example, if you've got somebody who's been in a domestic violence situation, they might not want somebody taking photographs of them, which would then identify where they're currently at, particularly if they've had to, leave home suddenly, or they've had a really difficult situation in the background. Some people are just shy and don't want to have their photo taken. And there could be a myriad of other reasons in between that, both of those extremes. So, but it is somebody's right to say, I don't want to have my photo taken. In terms of a Zoom call, one of the things that I do is, if I'm having a group Zoom call, is, do you mind if I take a screenshot of everybody? If you don't want to be involved in the photo, please turn your camera off for a moment. And then I take the screenshot. Once that's done, everybody comes back online. There could be all sorts of reasons for it, but we have to respect a person's wishes, really, I suppose.
Well, obviously. Now, the question I asked was really, is there something that we should be aware of by allowing somebody else taking picture of our face? For example, stealing our photo, I mean, stealing our identity. And
Right, okay. So identity theft is huge, and it is a growing issue. But it's not just about your face. Identity theft could be things like you being very careless with your own data. So, for example, if you go to work in a cafe or a co-working site, you suddenly start working on your bank, you're processing bank payments or other personal data that's on your screen. People looking over your shoulder might be able to take a photograph of that very quickly, and then access your personal data and steal that and create an identity using your bank details, your national insurance number, all of those things, as well as your photo. But then, these days, so many of us have photos on our website, on our social media streams, even if it's only a headshot, on LinkedIn, our smart business headshot. We're putting ourselves out there a lot more. So we just have to be mindful that there's a combination of things. So it's not just one element of your personal data. It could be your face, your bank details, your national insurance number, combined with an email address and those sorts of things. Offline, thinking about being mindful if you're going to somewhere like a credit card machine, a bank machine where you're extracting money from the bank machine. It's very common for these little gizmos to be put on there so that you can have your card read. It's less so these days, but years ago you used to hand over your card and they used to put them through like a paper machine, and the cards could be cloned without you even realizing it. But now, because a lot more of it is done in person, that's minimized it. And again, things like multi-factor authentication helps with protecting your personal data and your identity.
Well, we have a question from IPO Vid in Patrick's opinion. What is the best way to deal with people who seek to remove their permission to be photographed after the event? I presume they agreed initially and then they decided no, they don't like the photo because it's taken at such an angle that they are not so happy about it.
Right, okay. So ultimately, if somebody has consented to be in a group photo, then they remove the consent. You need to acknowledge that removal of consent, and you need to be able to comply with that. So it's about then about saying, okay, I can, I can acknowledge that, but those photographs have now, I mean, it is difficult with photographs because once you publish something on social media, for example, you have lost control of that photograph because you just don't know where it's gone. So while yes, I could come back to you and I could say, I've now removed my consent for you to use that photograph, you can stop using that photograph. But if that photograph has already been sold to various people who were at the event, or it's being shared as part of social media, unless you are absolutely certain where that's gone, it's very difficult then for you to remain in control of that. So you need to think about how you're collecting consent and being very clear with people what that consent means, and say to them, if you consent to be part of this photograph or this group of photographs, then we will be using them in this way. It'll be sold to all of the attendees at the meeting. It will be put on social media. It will be used in magazines or in flyers, or however you intend to use that, and make them aware that once the photograph has left your control, you can no longer guarantee that their image is not, used as part of that group photo or anything else. But it's essential prior to the event as well, that when they're giving consent to be photographed, that they are aware that it is up to them to make sure that they notify you as the official photographer, perhaps, that they don't want to be involved in photographs. And then, it's being clear and transparent up front and what's going to happen with that photograph afterwards. Hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does, because once it's in the public domain, we can't guarantee what is or who is going to steal it. Let's call it the way it is. So we have another question, but before I go into this, let me ask you, because I'm wondering, you talked about the fact that as a business owner, you have to ensure transparency. So I'm wondering if, for example, you've got a very curious client, although there is a limit to this transparency, because obviously you don't want to reveal sources of your material, because it's years and years of work and years of knowledge. So you never know whether it is somebody trying to steal your business. So what is the right amount, and what is there to look out? What are the red flags you would pay attention to?
From a transparency perspective, you don't need to be telling people how you've developed your business. What you are telling people is, in the course of my business, I collect this type of data from you: names, address, telephone number, email. I collect your bank details to make payments to you. If I'm a health or a wellness coach, I have to ask you questions about your health in order to service the contract that we have for me to support you. It's that level of transparency and openness. And then you'll be telling them what you do with the data. I store it in my CRM. I use it to email you to make bookings for our appointments. I use it to raise invoices. If you consent to email marketing, I'm going to send you my monthly newsletter or my weekly sales question or something like that. So it's that level of transparency. anything that's not personal data, you don't have to share with your clients, or prospects or the world at all. What we're talking about here is being transparent about how you collect somebody's personal data, what you do with it, how you use it, how long you keep it, and how you protect it, who you share it with. That's it. All of the important stuff around my IP or my skills or my knowledge, I don't have to tell you that, because you're right, that is the essence of my business.
Beautiful answer. Thank you so much, Jo Brianti. Now we have this question pending from Patrick, which would be my husband. Hasn't the addition of cheap cards hugely reduced the ability to rapidly clone cards? That's to your previous statement about cloning business cards, credit cards.
Okay. So, to a certain degree, yes. However, the criminals are always one step ahead. So, banks, building societies, credit card companies, all the time they have dedicated, detailed technical teams who are working hard to try and get in front of the latest, way of hacking in, the latest way of committing fraud or theft using personal data. And it's almost like you're in a constant race if you're in that technical world building these solutions. So yes, some types of fraud have been reduced by chip and pin and some of the other technological advances like multi-factor authentication. But as we are using that now, criminals are developing other ways. So, for example, there's a massive growth in phishing and attempts to get hold of your personal data either through telephone calls pretending to be from Microsoft or your bank or your building society or your credit card, or the email that says, oh, we've been unable to renew your Microsoft license, or click this link and enter your bank details. Those kinds of things now are rapidly on the increase. So as fast as one area of fraud detection is addressed and improved, criminals have already been working on the next big thing to kind of find a different way to get your bank details and divest you of your money. Really, that's their whole goal.
And I believe with wallets, digital wallets, it's a new world of opportunity how to skim your credit card. We have to be mindful of having various ways of being informed about any movement on your credit card. However, I remember just recently I was using one of the very popular kind of eBay equivalent. And I got information saying that I sold something, and I just had to click to finish collecting money. And without thinking, I clicked on that link. Luckily, my phone had a firewall, so that didn't go far. However, there are many ways, as you mentioned, and many new schemes how to get your data, your money. And as we know, data is valuable. So tell me, Jo, what is the value of my name, my surname, my picture? What is it really? And can I get money for it by committing to something?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm sure there must be some potential scheme. I'm not kind of aware of them, but from a criminal's perspective, depending on how quickly they've been found out. And in the UK, we've got some very big, well-known companies that have had quite big data breaches that have gone on for years and years and years, because the criminals had been so careful, so clever at getting into the back end of their systems that it had never been picked up. So potentially there were people out there who had maybe not massive amounts of money, because you might notice if suddenly £5,000 disappears from your bank account. But if you are just having little bits dripped out, and you're not a person who looks at your bank account every day, it might not occur to you that, over the course of a year, you've lost a few £100s. So one of the things I always urge people to do is to regularly keep on top of what does your bank and building society and credit card statement say. Don't just dribble along ongoing thinking, oh yeah, I've got a few £100 in my bank account or whatever it is, and then suddenly wake up one morning and think, hang on a minute, that's not right, but you can't place why it's not right. If you are familiar with every other transaction in your bank, and things that are not right will then stand out. So, for example, one of the things that banks and building societies and this sort of thing do to identify fraud on somebody's account is that we are creatures of habit. So, for example, every day you might go to the same cafe and you pay £3, you get your coffee and your cream bun in the morning. That's a routine. That's a routine expenditure on your account. Every month, your mortgage, your gas, your electric, your water, whatever goes out. Every week you spend £50, £60 in a supermarket, for example. These are all routine transactions that become a pattern and a trend. So then if something suddenly gets spent that's out of the ordinary, it flags to the bank or the building society, which will then flag them to flag you to say, did you really just spend £5,000 in Dubai? And I say that figure because I had that experience a few years ago where I was on holiday in the UK, and my credit card would work, and then there was an alert on my phone that asked me why I just spent £5,000 in Dubai. I've never been to Dubai. So it automatically had flagged that there was something wrong with my account and closed the card, kind of thing. So as individuals, look at your statements, look at your online, account, look at your app, and are those routine transactions recognizable? And if there's something odd, question it, look at it, check, did I really spend that amount of money there? Or why is that an odd amount? And ring your bank, ask that question. Don't leave it and drip, because you just don't know, and people at the banks will rather you do that and query a couple of quid than it dripping out over months.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes the names are so puzzling. Yeah, I've never heard the name of the shop, but it turns out it's the name of the business, not so much the shop. Now, you mentioned, Jo, the fact that GDPR is an ongoing series of processes. What are the processes, and how often do you have to do these processes?
So, if you embed GDPR into your business, every step of the way that you do your business. So, for example, we all need clients in our businesses to sell products and services to invoice, to make money, so that we've got a profitable business. That's what business is about. So within that, we are then collecting data on prospects. How are we looking after that data? When they become clients, how are we managing that data? How are we onboarding them? How are we, supporting them? If we're bringing on team members to support our clients, how are we validating? What are the security processes that we're going through? What are the checks that we're doing on our associate or on our VA or our social media person to make sure that they use a firewall, that they're using antivirus, malware? Where are they in the world? Do we have the right data sharing agreements embedded in so that we are taking control of that? And throughout the life cycle of data, as it comes into our business, as we use it, and then it comes to the end of its life cycle, what do we do with it then? How do we delete it, destroy it, get rid of it? Is it shredding handwritten notes? And there are coaches and consultants out there who don't use necessarily an online CRM. They have it in, notebooks and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But how are you tracking that data? How are you keeping that secure? How are you managing it through that life cycle, ensuring that you are looking at every sort of operational process and looking at the touch points with GDPR, and more importantly, data protection, because GDPR is relevant in some contexts. If you are American, you might have a range of different regulations. So it's embed data protection as a fundamental rather than saying it must be GDPR or it must be. Transparency around protecting your data is key.
So you mentioned several ways of looking into how you protect your data. How often do you suggest doing it? Whether it's monthly or whether it's quarterly?
So this depends on the size of your business, right? So if you're a global corporation, right, you've got a global IT team. There will be one person in that business who's responsible for, let's say, London. Another one might be responsible for Newcastle. Another one might be responsible for New York. Across the team globally, there will be people who specialize in looking after it. But then you come down to a sole operator. They don't have one person that looks after this person or that person. So you cannot be doing daily and weekly checks, because it may be that by the time you've done all those daily and weekly checks, where is the time for you to, do business, to make sales, to service the needs of your clients? So you need to think about how you can fit this in with your business. I usually say to people at the end of the month, when you do some sort of review of your month, right? You might look at, well, how many one-to-ones have I had? How many business networking meetings have I been to? Have I met my sales target? All of those kinds of businessy type questions. I say to people, add 2 or 3 questions on the end of that ask, have I had any risks identified with regard to data breaches? Have I had any concerns about my associates, my team members, my VA or my social media person? Have they shared data incorrectly that I need to talk to them about it, deal with it, whatever? And if you're a sole operator, I always recommend you find a really good IT person. And it might cost you a few quid every month, but paying a few quid every month to have an expert Because let's face it, we cannot be experts at everything. And I might be a brilliant coach, I might be a brilliant chef, I might be a brilliant whatever, but I might not be great at IT. That money you spend paying for that IT person who is constantly tracking, monitoring, and has all those systems that does what those global people do on a smaller scale is worth its weight in gold, because it's peace of mind.
Privacy is not about hiding something, it's about being able to control how we present ourselves to the world, as Esther Dyson says. So, it's enough of this talk about privacy, data protection. I think it's time for us to ask you fundamental questions. And let's start
Oh,
with what is the number one book you recommend and you think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my career?
Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it talks about having a growth mindset. And for those people who might not be familiar with it, there's the idea that you have a growth mindset, that you're constantly learning, growing, developing, evolving. And there's a fixed mindset that accepts this is how it's going to be. I'm not going to change. I can't make a change. And I read that quite a while ago, and I thought, gosh, I wish I'd have known about this a long time ago. It's fascinating stuff, and I
And I
learned,
guess relevant to your business
yeah,
because when you're in data protection, as you mentioned, there is a lot of bodies out there, and you have
yeah,
to be on top of
yeah,
knowledge about how to protect your business from
yeah,
the bodies. Now,
yeah.
let's go to your life lesson quote and how did it change you?
Life lesson. Many years ago, I worked with somebody who told me that attitude gets you further than aptitude. And I didn't quite grasp that. And I said to her, I'm not quite sure what you mean. And she said, you can have an expert and they might be very, very good and very, very knowledgeable. But if they don't have the right attitude, then maybe they won't fit in with the team. Maybe they won't be that get up and go. They won't be, you know, all of those enthusiastic things that you need to be part of the team and just achieve. So I've lived with that since, and I've really, really, yeah, liked that phrase. It sticks with me, and I tell my children that all the time.
There you go, Jo Brianti. Talking about attitude, have the right attitude, and you definitely are going to have a good team. I'm thinking about one person in particular. In my career, I've had somebody who was undermining my power, who was very intelligent. However, the mindset wasn't with the team building. It was quite challenging. And I can also add to your quotation by Zig Ziglar, I can also add the startup mantra, which is fire fast if somebody has got the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, I wanted to ask you a question that we like to quote on our show. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water. In life or business, how are you in hot water? How are you brewing, Joe?
So how am I in hot water? Gosh, when I get into hot water, um, I dig in and just keep digging and digging and digging and digging and digging. But I've learnt over the years that when things get really, really hot, sometimes you just need to step away and you need to go for a walk. You need to take a deep breath. I like to, if things get really sticky, it sounds kind of frivolous, but I go to the pool and I swim and I just do half an hour length. And it's that repetitive concentration that brings relaxation, that then I can come back to the situation, I feel fresh, and I can look at it again. And, sometimes it's really important to step away. And then you can come back, as I say, and the hot water feels just a little bit cooler and you can deal with it again.
That's a beautiful comparison, and I think about the fact that British culture is so ingrained in the art of making a tea, and there is always this story about whether to add milk before pouring the hot water or afterwards. So just to make sure we know how you're brewing your tea, is it milk after or milk before hot water?
I don't have tea at all.
Oh my goodness.
I drink peppermint. So a few peppermint leaves and that's it. I
Oh
don't drink tea
my
at
goodness.
all. But
Oh.
apparently you always put milk first. And tea should be out of a pot.
Okay.
Apparently.
Well, there we go. We learn every day. As you said, you always have to have this mindset of everlasting learning. Now, imagine you can travel anywhere in the world and you can meet any person in the world. Who would you like to meet and where would you like to go to?
Oh gosh, this is so easy. There is a television program called Death in Paradise, and there is this little beach hut, and it almost looks like a shack. It almost looks like it's falling down, but I love the idea of being there. The beach is quiet. It's warm. It's sunshine. It's in Guadeloupe, and then I'd have Michelle and Barack Obama because I just think that they are just such interesting people. They weren't from, I suppose, well-off families. They worked hard all their lives. I've read Michelle Obama's book. I've listened to speeches she's given to children in London schools, trying to inspire young women to be something, to get out there, to do something, and that the world is their oyster. And I really think that that's great. There weren't people like that as obvious when I was in school. And yeah, I think they would just be fascinating to have a conversation with.
Mm. Absolutely. I hope you're gonna meet them one day in Guadeloupe, whether in your
That would
dreams
be
or in real life. Fingers crossed, Joe. I guess they might need your advice on data protection, given the fact that we've seen a couple of videos generated by artificial intelligence
oh
with.
yes.
Barack, so I guess you could be very useful, Joe. You just have to go out and introduce yourself. Fingers crossed.
So fantastic. That'd be lovely.
There you go. Hopefully, you will have a lovely mint tea. Now, it's almost over. Our show has been very, very transparent today. The best protection any woman can have is courage.
Yes.
as Elizabeth Cady Stanton says. So I encourage you all and individuals who were joining us today and asking questions and commented. Olga Vasina, IPOV in Patrick's opinion. Thank you so much for tuning in. I encourage also all of you to join us next week. We are going to talk about the positive impact of AI on the future of work. That's another episode coming next week, 108. Wednesday, as always, we will be tuning on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And that's it from episode 107 of PhD Livestream. Thanks to our lovely guest, Jo Brianti. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on IT, turn on notifications, make sure you click that little button, and you will be alerted once the video has been released. Thank you so much. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder and protect your data. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Today is your future to hack the positivity you want. Thank you.